How McDonald's was a part of the biggest controversy in the fast food industry. The first thing that you think about McDonald's after the Big M is the clown that sits outside to greet you and make sure you have a great time. The intentions were right, but they missed out a very important point. Kids are terrified of clowns. Everybody loves McDonald's and it is one of the biggest fast food chains in the world, but what you may not know is that it started with a long battle between the McDonald brothers and Ray Kroc. Richard and Maurice McDonald gave a new face to the tiny populace of Arcadia, a small city in California, when they opened a stand selling burgers for 10 pennies, which were served in a minute, wrapped in paper, without the need of waiters or servers. The customer could ask for a menu directly from the chef. After 3 years in 1940, the McDonald brothers transformed their Food on Wheels food truck into a full-fledged restaurant with foundations, flanked by a yellow M that was 7.5 meters high and could be seen not from space but rather from anywhere in the town. The same M that made history in the fast food industry. Today, there are nearly 40,000 McDonald's restaurants, which together feed 68 million people every single day in 118 countries around the globe. In 1999, Time magazine honored the 100 most notable people of the century: Albert Einstein, Mahatma Gandhi, Bart Simpson, and obviously the originator of McDonald's, Ray Kroc. Now, you may be wondering who in the world is Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc was a milkshake machine salesman. He wasn't a very good one, but when the McDonald's siblings put in a request for 6 mixers, Kroc felt that he won the lottery, but he had no clue that this was just the start. He quickly realized the capability of the blinding food framework at the McDonald's restaurant. The cost was tiny and the clients infinite. Kroc realized the amount of hidden potential and offered to fill in as brand agent. In 1955, he started selling licenses. In 1961, he ached for an expansion at the national level. The McDonald brothers came up short on that ambition. Their dream was to reach $1 million before turning 50. So, instead of dreaming big and working to make those dreams come true, they sold their whole organization for $4 million and 0.5% of the profits. Kroc piled up the only remaining dollar and later called them obtuse in a book. He was transparently unconcerned with the way that he was investing each penny he had in the test. Even though the McDonald's siblings sold out to Kroc, they saved the first store for their employees to run. A rotten trick, Kroc called it. He also said that Richard and Maurice in any case defended themselves by having gone through 30 years working 7 days per week. The understanding between Kroc and McDonald's came to an end with a handshake, no contracts. The reason was that none of the three were keen on mentioning the 0.5% in their accounts. Along these lines, Richard and Maurice McDonald went from having the best thought in the history of hospitality to the most noticeably awful thought throughout the entire existence of business. Kroc extended the chain of restaurants all over the nation and reclassified the idea of fast food, making consumption considerably fast. How? In order to avoid customers staying too long at the restaurant, Kroc switched off the heating. He introduced seats with a straight back so customers leaned over the table and in this way ate quicker. He introduced bigger tables so customers couldn't talk easily. The beverages were served in paper cones that were difficult to hold. If customers needed to hold their beverages, they would eat faster. Customers acknowledged this restaurant design for its sheer consistency. The experience was as modest as the food. After transforming McDonald's into a central hub of American mainstream society, Kroc was hell-bent on buying the original restaurant. The McDonald brothers firmly denied because their intention was to leave it to the employees who had inaugurated it in 1940. Incidentally, this original foundation had to be renamed the Big M on the grounds that the name McDonald's was the registered. Kroc's response was to open a McDonald's over the road from the Big M. A couple of years after the incident, the Big M shut its doors because they were incapable to compete with McDonald's across the road. Kroc ensured that he would stand out forever as the originator of McDonald's. In his autobiography, he dated the organization's origin to 1955 with the launch of the first restaurant regulated by him in Des Plaines, Illinois. The nephew of the McDonald brothers, Ronald, yes, he calls himself the clown icon of the brand, condemns Kroc's unbridled ego. Why else would he put a bust of his face in every restaurant? Why put his name on the tablecloths? There is no other corporation in the United States in which an employee becomes the founder. Richard McDonald had complained that Kroc was waiting to buy his company in order to start forging his legacy as the official founder. No one referred to him as the founder until we sold him the company. It didn't matter what Richard had to say. History is always written by winners. In 1990, the organization bought the burger truck with which everything had begun. It was re-established, painted with the corporate shades of red and yellow, and introduced in a museum dedicated to the history of McDonald's, a history that was rewritten by Kroc. Maurice McDonald eventually died from a heart attack in 1971, defeated by the pressure and anger of having been tricked and cheated, and afterwards struck down by history. Richard took things all more calmly, living to be 89 years of age. "I have enough money. It's not worth dying for that," he told his nephew, Ronald. He saw how his brother Maurice had suffered to the point of death and didn't want the same happening to him. Richard McDonald in fact burned every time he received an annual copy of McDonald's magazine in his home commemorating Founders Day, a tribute to Ray Kroc, in which the McDonald brothers were not mentioned. However, Richard insisted that he didn't regret his choice to sell the organization and went on to live a calm life. "I would have wound up in some skyscrapers somewhere with about 4 ulcers and 8 tax attorneys trying to figure out how to pay all my income tax," he reflected in 1991. At the point when he passed on in 1998, Richard McDonald lived in a 3-room house in his local New Hampshire. He left a legacy of $2.7 million. Kroc, however, died in 1984 with a fortune estimated at $760 million and having bought his own baseball team. Today, the McDonald's website proudly remembers the history of its world domination. The first stop of that walk through the history of McDonald's is in 1955 with the arrival of Ray Kroc. The Founder, coordinated by John Lee Hancock, is a parody where Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc and the McDonald siblings show up as amusing side characters. One of the special expressions of the film is he took someone else's idea and America ate it up. Eaten up by the ambition of their accomplice, all that Richard and Maurice McDonald were 2 people with a major idea, yet they didn't dare to dream big enough to accomplish it. In 1989, a promotional campaign summed up the company's historical legacy. It began as a spark from Dick, Richard, and Mac, Maurice McDonald, and with the guiding hand of Ray Kroc, it became a flame. Today, the golden arches shine across the land. That humongous M sparkles so bright that it has wound up leaving its makers in the shade. It is commendable to see where he came from and what he went through to take McDonald's to a place Maurice and Richard may never have. I guess at the end of the day, it really does come down to how big you dream. Since in the business that invented the idea of fast food, the significant thing isn't who makes you the burger, but the speed with which they serve you. Ray Kroc was the fastest person in this story. That is it for today. If you guys like the story, please give us a like, share the video, and subscribe for more content like this. Do check out the movie The Founder. It is very inspiring. If you have any suggestions, please comment down below. Thank you and see you next time.